Alright, hello everyone, welcome to video about sideboarding with Blue Moon in 2019. Sideboarding generally is just, well, it's a really interesting topic. It's very deep and depends on, it's very context dependent, and also very important. And often people who are new to a deck, you know, come asking for, maybe in the Blue Moon Discord, for some sideboard guides or like tips, and I always struggle to like say anything. Like, I love talking about sideboarding and playing with Blue Moon, but giving something concise and accurate is very hard. But I figured it's might be a fun idea to make a video about it, just like general kind of overview, something that is hopefully useful down the line and is accurate, because well, I'm trying to give some general guidelines, explain how I think, and basically I'm trying to cover as much as I can with like about things that I'm personally confident about. Everything I talk here is something I've learned, or at least deducted or decided from first-hand experience. And yeah, now it's like generally like primers and sideboarding guides, they tend to age really fast, so I'm not trying to, definitely not going to like give any like clear numbers, especially since every Blue Moon deck usually just differs, so you really can't just give a like list or some kind of guide, because I mean everyone has a different Blue Moon deck, different lists, so giving a guide would be impossible. And my list I'm always changing a card or two, especially in the sideboard, like almost between every league, and there is usually also a reason for it, because it's obviously meta independent. So this is something I'm going to refer people to down the line. If someone asks, hey, where do you bring this in, where do you bring this in, or like more likely, how do you sideboard against this deck, I'm going to go over the most popular decks that I played against as well. Right now, in the fall of 2019, which is like, you know, we had just 2 really big sets from Modern got released during this year. So, and we also got huge bannings, maybe a ban, Faceless Looting, and an unban, not huge unban, but still Stoneforge Mystic. So it's probably quite likely that the metagame, well, it will shift down the line, but not as much as it has just done. So I'm hopeful this will be maybe useful down the line as well. So yeah, I'm gonna put down in the description and maybe in the comments as well, timestamps for different matchups. I'm gonna go matchup by matchup, just give a fast overall expression, like what is my experience or whatever. These are decks I know particular order, I just wrote them down in the order they popped in my mind. And yeah, here you can see it's just like, would be lovely to go over like specific builds. Like all things in the ice builds are somewhat similar, but there are some differences. Obviously, what cards you have in the main deck changes what your sideboard is, first of all, and how you sideboard. I can only give my experience from running the list that I run. They usually have Narset. I have played with Charm. I never played with Chase. Maybe I have, but I have never cast it even. But generally, like, well, in any case, mainboard is something that it's not too important in a way. We just want to go over what you want to bring in, and well, we'll see how it goes. I don't really have a script for this. I have just some general notes. And yeah, we have some sideboard cards. I basically picked every sideboard card that I have played in the past 6 months, and there are surprisingly few. So actually, well, we have some nice options in the Blue Moon sideboard, and the sideboard is very important, but luckily, in a way, there actually aren't that many things to run, like, at least that's how I roll. Like, I think this, like, yeah, I might be missing some important sideboard cards, but I mean, I'm skipping like Revenge Trap and some other Grave Hate because there are no Grave decks actually in this list besides Dredge, but we'll get down to it. Okay, I think this is enough like intro. Let's go to the matchups and see how it goes. So first we have the blue-white control deck, Azorius Control. Really one of my favorite matchups, and there are 2 versions of this deck. Basically, every list will differ, and there are some. Okay, there's the Planeswalker heavy version with Narset usually, and then there is the Stoneforge Mystic version, which usually maybe has the fairy, 1 or 2, but no Narsets usually, and maybe like, yeah, like might have 1 or 2 big or small Teferi. Some lists have a couple of chases, but that's it. Obviously, the Stoneforge Mystic package eats up some slots. And yeah, definitely we need to make sure, first of all, that Teferi cannot stick in the board for too long. Against the known Stoneforge Mystic versions, obviously we're looking to replace, well, everything that doesn't trade card for card, basically. Appray is not worth it. Bolt is bad, because it's basically just like a panic button. So you might be looking to run maybe 2 or 1, depending on if you have Fry. If you can replace like bolts, appraise, and something in the ices with Fry, with some counters, you should do it. And yeah, also Thing in the Ice is decent. It's a little bit sketchy because it pairs against Teferi horribly. And actually, even though sometimes people path the Thing in the Ice and people respect it, I think it's mostly just basically a play mistake by weaker opponents. Like, I think you see it often that blue-white players, they aggressively path Thing in the Ices, because they basically, I think they want to play around counter spells. But really, I think it's just a mistake. They should just keep the paths, you know, as a reserve, if everything else fails, basically. So I think there might be some kind of like, how to say it, an error, like, if you just play against random opponents, some not the best opponents, you might get a better impression of Thing than it really is. But having that said, I think, like, well, you definitely want to shave some, but I think having 2 or 1 is okay. But usually, in the matchup, I'm looking to just, if I have to keep these cards in more than I want to, and, you know, I mean, irregardless, I usually just try to, you know, lure them away. Either I pitch them to force in a situation that calls for it, or I try to use Desert Lighthouse, or I try to use Click to get rid of them, because they don't trade 1 for 1. This is usually just a panic button against Vendilion Click, because Click can be annoying. And yeah, so against just the traditional Planeswalker heavy version, we're just looking to basically, obviously, get Fry. It's very nice to have on top of the Magmatic Sinkholes, just have a card that trades 1 for 1 against small Teferi, and at least answers big Teferi as well. And also, because usually if opponent is playing Chase, and if they manage to land one, of course you want to counter them, but if they resolve one, they usually just +2 straight away. Obviously they do it if you have an Ast in play. So there also you want to have way to deal 5 cleanly. Just, and obviously the uncounterability is very big. Like, mostly you're looking to keep controlling the matchup. You know, you don't want to let them resolve anything threatening. And it can be done if you have just sufficient amount of counter spells, but again, it's nice to have these like answers in case something bad happens. Especially with most small Teferi, which can like you know, sneak in. Also, it's just like basically very nice to have, because sometimes you might have a situation where basically you can force your own Nast on your own turn with Spell Pierce, for example, or Mana Leak or Remand. And like, you wanna do it because having a Nast in play is huge. It's just very huge. But then that means the opponent also gets a chance to resolve something on their turn. So for those situations, like, you can go for these lines more safely if you have Sinkhole, and especially if you have Fry. And the cards definitely counters. It's just, I mean, you can understand this, right? It's all about tempo, like, again, forcing Cryptic to resolve, forcing Nast to resolve. As a general note, in this matchup, like, people need to use Cryptics more aggressively. If you can smell a weakness, just like, you should Cryptic, for example, just cantrips, if you get a chance. Don't be picky. If you have an opening to use Cryptic profitably, you should do it. Countering with Veteran Visions with Cryptic Command is very strong play. But yeah, then there's also Pillage, and this is just a way to basically take out these sketchy and situational cards. That basically, these cards just create weaknesses in your plan, because Sync just means you are weaker to Teferi, and Bolt just doesn't trade, so yeah. And again, the mana advantage which you kind of want to gain with these cheap counter spells is the same reason that Pillage is good. It's what you want to do. Then we have the Stoneforge Mystic versions. Those are actually a bit tougher, I think. It's slightly offset by the fact that they usually have fewer Teferis, but still, they usually do have some. And the fact that they can go, like, basically force your hand on their turn too, and then still like playing a Stoneforge Mystic, and then also playing Teferi on the next turn, means it's really easy for them to just like brute force something through, and you need more ways to answer things. So I would say Fry is even more relevant against the Stoneforge Mystic version. For one, because it kills Stoneforge Mystic, and because it's easier for them to sneak in a Planeswalker, because they have the forcing play of playing Stoneforge Mystic, which could run away with the game if you can't deal with it. Obviously, Spell Snare is very important against the Stoneforge Mystic version, but yeah, in that matchup, definitely you keep in upgrades, very solid. Bolt stock goes up, so if you have a chance, basically, okay, do you want to play like 2 things, 1 bolt, or 1 thing, 2 bolts? I think you want to maybe play 2 bolts, unless you have like already Upgrade and Fry. I think if you have Fry, Upgrade, then you can get away with just 1 bolt. Mostly because we have Pillages. And that is really beautiful about this matchup, because even though they have the Stoneforge Mystic, we are already bringing in Pillages, because just Zone Raining the opponent is already good. Even if we don't have a Blood Moon in play, it's just a solid way to trade 1 for 1. Getting the mana advantage means you have more chances to resolve your own spells, like Gnaset and Cryptics, to get an advantage. And Pillages just act as a safety board, so yeah. Usually, I mean, it's at this point almost universal. Every Blue Moon list should have 2 Pillages in their deck, and you're gonna bring both in against both blue-white versions, but especially against Stoneforge Mystic. So I think that covers pretty much it. Just you need to watch out, but you need to leverage your cheap counter spells, play opt and snap offs aggressively. And that's really it. Try to resolve critics. Don't care about the target, just try to resolve them. Oh, and I think Relic is not good enough. Basically, too symmetrical, and we usually have enough cards to bring in, or at least we should have enough cards to bring in. If your sideboard has young PC, by the way, then this is definitely like, this card is amazing against blue-white. Just slam dunk, play it. It's very rare, but you know, things might change. I think this card is very playable, even though it has slight anti-synergy with Thing. But I think it's a good card against, for example, Grixis Death Shadow, which we'll come back to. Yeah, if you have these, you can forget about Thing in the Ices. Just play young PCs, if you can. And actually the next archetype is Grixis Death Shadow. This is a very tricky one. And I guess the main contention is, like, how good is Lightning Bolt? My answer is, it's not good. It's like basically just plan C if you have no other real plan to beat the deck. Because, like, even though the Death Shadow deck does deal damage to itself, it has so much control and so much information that it's really hard to just, you know, get them. The best, like, I think you want to keep maybe 2 Lightning Bolts usually, unless you have like 5 rows in the sideboard, then you can, you know, take away all the bolts. But usually I think you want to have like 2 bolts, 2 or 1 bolts in the deck, mostly because it's just another way to kill Gurmag Angler without, well, you don't want to, the thing is, you don't never want to double bolt anything against Death Shadow. This deck matchup is grindy. They are fast and grindy, which is why the matchup is tough in my opinion. But you can't really just 1 for 2 yourself. At least, like, unless if you can avoid it. So basically the best case scenario is maybe opponent discards your Lightning Bolt with Inquisition, and later down the road they attack with a Gurmag Angler and you have a Snappy, so you can like snap, block Angler and then bolt it. You know, 1 for 1 trade. You pay 3 mana, it sucks, but that's like the best case scenario. And of course, well, maybe they don't discard it, but you can go like, okay, snap, block, you know, maybe you give opt a flashback, you opt, and then you play a Lightning Bolt from your hand on the Gurmag Angler. That is like basically the 2 scenarios where Lightning Bolt can be good, I think. The scenario where you actually get to kill them with bolts, it might happen in game once, but I don't think it can happen in game 2s and 3s. And even if it can happen, but it's very infrequent, and again, it's so easy for the Death Shadow opponent to control their life total, because they do have the stops and the Inquisitions, so it's just very optimistic, and I think you only keep all 4 bolts if you are desperate. The correct approach, I think, is just to instead just play anything that is cheap and that trades 1 for 1. So Spell PS, great. Dispel also, and Dispel and Frostrum, I think you definitely want to play these. And because again, I think you just want to trade. If you can have a mana neutral trade against Death Shadow, you take it. So countering, well, of course the dream is to counter like Stubborn Denial with this Dispel. Would be like the dream scenario, and it can happen. But just countering a Thought Scour, you know, I'll take it. It can slow them down, slow down the Gurmag Angler, which is very key in the basically winning games. Flusterstorm is similar, with the upside that it actually also counters like Thought Seizes and Inquisitions, which is even better. Like an amazing deal, I'll take it. The one thing that is I'm not 100% sure about, and actually also ties with the Bolt, is Spell Snare. Again, this is a bit more narrow than Dispel and Flusterstorm. Usually people sideboard out some Temur Battle Rages, so the only target for the snare usually is just Snapcaster Mage. That is quite narrow. But lately the lists, or for some time now, the Grixis Death Shadow lists have been playing Chase. And so that gives this second target, which is something. So I think playing 1 is where I'm at right now. It could be 0, could be 2, and I think 1 is maybe the correct number. Because again, you definitely do want to counter the snappies. And yeah, also for confirmation, against the chase versions, some people bought out chases, but not everyone does it, so you know, both is good. Like, well, 2 bots is good. I don't think you want to play more than 2, but yeah, having 2, very nice. Or it can be nice. Then there is... Oh yeah, so definitely, if you can trade 1 for 1, do it. Roast is then again amazing. Flame Slash is slightly better at killing Death Shadow, but it lacks the ability to kill Gurmaganger in a combat on their turn, so I think it's just worse for the most part. Even though sometimes the Death Shadow player does like put their Death Shadow at exactly 4 toughness, because they are obviously playing around Bolt. Like, so they wanna make it bigger than 3 toughness, but they don't wanna take too much damage. So 4 is somewhat common number, but still, the inability to kill Angler is like just a deal breaker basically. Some other good cards bring in. We have Drakes. This is actually my favorite. It can get huge really fast. It usually trades with Gurmag Anger. It cannot be stopped, which is huge. So just solid 2 for 1. With the upside, it can just randomly win a game. So this is like, I think this is one of the best cards against Death Shadow, Grixis Death Shadow. So if the meta becomes very mid-rangey and very Death Shadowy, this is a good pick. Easy, I also like just blocking the Gurmag Angers and Death Shadows is huge. And the deck does have some number of removal spells, because they usually do respecting the eyes, so Fatal Pushes do stay in. They do bring in usually Coelacanth's Command, but outside of that, and also usually Dismembers, they have 1 or 2. But outside of that, there aren't too many ways they can kill PZ. And the tempo advantage you gain from just like a couple of tokens can be game winning. So definitely like the PZ. Relic, very good. Again, it doesn't trade, but it cantrips, so like perfect. You draw into your actual spells that do something. Because like, just like for example, single Roast or single Crackling Drake or Mana Leak can have a huge impact in the game. Or Blood Moon as well can have a huge impact, and the rest is kind of filler. You just want to trade 1 for 1 and dig for the good cards. Relic has the upside of just randomly shutting down the Gurmag Angers, which is huge. So definitely, you always bring this in. We have again Melody. Kind of a niche sideboard card, but it does kill Death Shadow for 3 mana, which is okay. I'm talking about the main deck cards here. Again, I think definitely keeping Leaks and Remands. These cards are cheap enough ways to deal, like trade 1 for 1. So they make the cut easily. Cryptic Command, while it's expensive and extremely stoppable, I think you want to keep it all, because it's just, even though it's very simple, it is a good way to kind of deal with a Gurmag Anger. And usually bouncing the Gurmag slows them down a lot, by a lot, and I mean that's basically it. It's not the best, but it does something. And also, once you survive to the later game by like maybe playing a roast or two or having a PZ, you ultimately do need a way to grind the opponent out. And that is usually, I mean, it's a very common reason why Cryptic stays in many matchups. Like, you need a way to like just take over the game, ultimately. Then we have Blood Moon. Well, it's obviously great. The Death Shadow player, they do respect it usually, and they do have information, and this is just quite often just a lightning rod, but you need to take these chances. You need to give yourself some winning chances, basically. So definitely do keep them in and bring in any extras if you can. And that's that basically for Death Shadow, Grixis Death Shadow. Next we have 4-color / Grixis Whirza, the Top the Foundry combo deck. This deck is very extremely well-rounded for a combo deck. Even though it plays a lot of artifacts and has like combo that uses graveyard, it's not very fragile. I think it's actually quite similar to matchup against blue-white. You need to keep control of the game. You cannot let them, like, too many of their cards generate value instantly upon entering the battlefield. So you need to keep control. Basically, counter almost everything. And definitely watch out for the fairies and Tesserets off the board. Again, here in this matchup, just play all the counter spells. Even though rejection doesn't really counter anything like super valuable, I definitely still bring them in. Just countering an Astrolabe is good. It can randomly slow them down by cutting them off one color for like Teferi. In the best case scenario, it can stop them from turning on their Mox Opals, which is huge. Because like the turn 2 Teferis are maybe the most scary things they can do. The Whirza deck. And if I had this spell, I would bring it in. Usually people do keep in the burrs, because it's not really an expensive spell for this deck. And against Spell Pierce, good. Definitely want to keep those Teferis in check. Definitely want to keep those Tesserets in check. That's basically it. Just you want to play all the counters. Charm is nice. Just want to counter everything. And ultimately you want to just take over the Crucible again. Just survive until 4 mana and keep everything under control. Take out some bolts at least. You are hoping to bring in these cards that actually kill Whirza and the Fairy and the threat. So Fry, amazing. Sinkhole, great. Roast, not really. And Upgrade, of course, amazing. So like I like having maybe 3 ways to kill this Goblin Engineer. Maybe 1, like just 1 or 2 upper boards. So you can stop the value loops basically. Well, talking of the value loops, again, this is a matchup where I do bring in Relic. It's not super important, but it's just like, again, keeps the stuff in check. But it's not super important because really the Goblin Engineer is the only card that uses Graveyard, and usually you need to kill it or counter it anyway, so not usually important, but it can matter. So what else do we have? Pointers here. Click. I'm not sure about this one. I think you'd rather not bring it in, even though this matchup is very draw-go-ish. The fact that it just dies to a single Thopter token, which can sneak in sometimes, even though you obviously want to counter all the foundries, if possible. It can happen, and well, you don't want to take risks, because again, this is a matchup where you need to have cards that trade 1 for 1, because they have too many must counters basically. You have to keep countering every Teferi, every Urza, unless sometimes it can. Okay, sometimes it can be okay to have an Urza resolve if you kind of maybe kill the Urza in response to the ETB trigger or before they can activate Urza, the value ability, and then later have Thing Flip, or maybe you have Sutter Storm. Something to clear the board basically. Pillage again. If you have Upgrade and Shutterstorm, you're well off basically. But I think you wanna still bring in one Pillage, for example. Sometimes they do have these annoying artifacts like Gravedigger's Cage, or even Bridge, Incinerating Bridge. I mean, these cards are easy to, especially if you have such a storm, they are easy to answer down the line, even just with Cryptic Bounce drawing, but I think having one is quite fine. If you, for example, if you manage to rejection Astrolabe, then pillaging Shock land might be actually quite strong. You might be able to stop them from playing Teferi or something, who knows. It just gives you one more card to deal with artifacts, because, well, you need to keep the combo in check anyway, even though it's not as important in this deck than in like typical Flop the Foundry combo decks. You still need to be able to sometimes kill the Flop the Foundry, so I do like it. Unless you have like just an amazing sideboard with like, I don't know, double fries and who knows. Okay, what else? Yeah, Blood Moon, not good. They actually don't have that many, like they usually have like one or two maybe these Inventor Spheres, but that's whatever. You actually can't cut them off colors because they have Mox Opals and whatnot, Astrolabes, so again, like leaving Blood Moons in this matchup is a huge blunder, because you need to be able to keep your counter spells open and trade 1-for-1 constantly. Ashok, on the other hand, I think it's good. It does usually deal away with, or basically trade with one or two cards from them by you know, just stopping the Goblin Engineer and the Whir. It's not as good as against some other decks, but still I think it's good enough. Unless again you have a really amazing sideboard with just basically an all-star sideboard. Also, again, in this matchup, if you, for example, play Shutterstorm, definitely consider milling yourself somewhat aggressively if the situation calls for it. Surgical is interesting. I must say, I actually don't have first-hand experience playing Surgical in the matchup, so not sure how good it would be. My gut instinct says it's not good enough, because again, the scariest cards from the deck is like basically Tesseract actually, and Sai and Urza, so these fair mid-range threats are just the real threat in the matchup. Also, some versions have Stoneforge Mystic, maybe even from the sideboard, so just again, having a card that doesn't trade 1-for-1 basically consistently is liability. And also like just I think just extracting a sword wouldn't do much, because if they have Foundry out, just making a couple of tokens for them can be game winning. Like if they can freely sack cards like, you know, Astrolabes and the, you know, they have ways to just like create Thopters for free basically. So yeah, it's quite value oriented matchup. I think that covers that. Thingy the Ice, of course, great. Deals with the Supper tokens, and you can consistently bounce your Snapcaster Mages back, because they don't really have. They usually have, or sometimes they bring in pushes, fatal pushes from the board to play more fair, controlling game plan. But still, usually you do get to flip it, and you do get the flip trigger, and you can return Snapcaster Mages back to your hand to gain more value, which is really important. Like in these combo matchups, it's definitely a huge bonus that you get to often bounce Snappy back to hand, because it's just a very kind of a free way to gain card advantage and also card selection. Alright, next we have a Jaunt. This is a really tough matchup, I think. I mean, that's really... what can I say? You really need to you can make slight upgrades to your cards. I think the biggest and the best thing you can do in the matchup is, like, if at all possible, board out all your thing in the ices. The Jaunt opponents, I think, like, at least 99% of the time, they will respect the card, and they will keep / bring in more answers to sing the ice, and the answers they have for thing are super efficient and backbreaking. Like, getting thing fatal pushed against Jaunt is horrific. Getting it Liliana minus is horrific. So I think this, like, cutting all things is one of the ways you can actually get an advantage in the matchup. It's slightly risky, but I would still, like, even if I had only 4 Sun Custom Mages left in my deck, I would still do it. I would say so. Having a click would be nice, just a more consistent way to, like, actually close the game once you have gone to the later stage of the game. So yeah, I would rather keep anything else in, like even Force of Negation, for example, because answering their Planeswalkers is important. So just try to counter everything, avoid Thing in the Ice. Blood Moon is not too troublesome for Jaunt, but it can be game winning. And usually it at least trades with an utility land like Ravine, so basically 1-for-1 answer. It makes your remands a lot better. It makes it easier to have time to critic command stuff. So it's a keeper, definitely. Again, click is tough. Most Jaunt lists nowadays, they have like 3 or 4 Renan 6s. It's not beautiful, but I think you still keep it in, because it's just still just the better threat between these two. Spell Pierce I like, because again, just wanna have these ways to trade 1-for-1 and stop things from resolving. It becomes dead in the late game, but that's fine. We can use Desert Lighthouse, we can use Click to cycle it away. And there are ways, so you can just, you know, pitch to Force, I guess, sometimes, if you have to do it. So what else do we have for Jaunt? Having Flame Slash is nice in this matchup, because this slash actually consistently kills turn 2 Tarmogoyf, whereas Bolt doesn't. So yeah, like if opponent goes turn 1 fetch, discard, and turn 2 they play Tarmogoyf, Flame Slash still kills the Tarmogoyf, whereas Bolt doesn't. That is very nice. Again, because, well, Bolt deals 1 less, and also because Slash is a sorcery, and so it doesn't add card type to graveyard after a discard spell. So if you have, like, I usually have a couple of Flame Slashes in my sideboard. Definitely like bringing them in. Obviously also Roast. Like, you just need more answers to kill Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is a pain in the butt. Then also an amazing card, Relic. This is just, again, it cantrips. So you on a Tarmo card, whenever you use this, it makes their Tarmogoyfs small. So you usually wanna, even against the Renan 6 versions, I think, you wanna keep in 1 or 2 bolts, because it's just basically a flex way to kill Planeswalkers when you have no better way. And it pairs up with Relic to kill Tarmogoyfs, and also, well, this kills Ravines sometimes. So it's again a matchup where I keep 1, usually 2 in, but definitely shave down on them and cut all things if you can. So yeah, Relic, great. Killing Tarmogoyf is so important. It also usually tops Colocan's command, which can be huge, at least for a while. But I mean, buying time is like good because it means you have more chances to use Cryptic Command to counter their stuff. And that is really the game plan. Just try to resolve Cryptic Commands, you know, in the counter draw mode. That is how you win. Relic helps there. Also, it can stop Renan 6, maybe. Though most likely not. It is what it is. Do try to counter Renan 6 again to just go back. Spell PS, Snare, amazing. You wanna definitely counter Renan 6s and Tarmogoyfs. And I think, like, again, playing forces over things is good, definitely. For many reasons, but also, again, because of Liliana and Renan 6. You wanna counter those, even if it means pitching. Because what can I say? Just counter them, yeah. And what else for Jund? Drake I like again. This is basically just my favorite card against these fair decks. It usually dies kinda easily to Fatal Push or sometimes Assassin's Trophy, but still it's 2 for 1. It gives you a chance to win the game. I like it a lot. Ral, it is expensive. I hate expensive cards, but this is a matchup where Ral might be at its best. Usually kills Tarmogoyf, goes up to 6 loyalty, so quite persistent. Doesn't die to Bloodbraid Elf swing, which is huge. A Melody. This is basically a card you put in the sideboard because you expect this matchup for the most part. And again, EE is what you wanna bring in, because you just want more ways to kill Tarmogoyf. That is the first thing you wanna make sure of, that you can actually answer Tarmogoyf. Right, that's for Jund. And then we have Scapeshift. This is a matchup that has recently gotten a bit tougher because of the introduction of Whale of Summer, or Summer Whale, whatever it's called. So basically just countering stuff is a bit harder. So definitely, obviously a matchup for Blood Moon. You wanna play all the counters. Spell PS, great. Spell Snare, amazing. Just, you wanna stop the early ramp spell very aggressively to stop them from getting to 6 and 7 lands. Especially now that they have the Field of the Dead to make zombies, which can be annoying. But for the most part, this matchup is quite straightforward. So things to watch out for are definitely Veil of Summer. Also, they might have cards like Carnage Tyrant that they can pact for, so keep that in mind. Even if you have them kind of under control, you should try to also like just... And if you cannot pillage or Cryptic Command a forest while a Blood Moon is out, you should counter pacts once they have hit 6 or 7 mana, because they might have something that's really tough to deal with and you actually can't win. So yeah, pillage matchup definitely. Kill the lands, just stop them early. Ashok, amazing, obviously. And again, one more thing to watch out for is these green mid-range cards like Tracker and Causer of Crucifix. So I think this is not a matchup for Bolt. I think you bolt them all out, and you rather keep in some sinkholes because of cards like, again, Causer, Tracker, and sometimes Chandra. I would rather play like one Flame Slash, almost. Like maybe one Bolt is fine, but it's like a close race because, well, Nowadays, Coaster is less common, people often play just Tracker, so actually one bot is fine, but no more than one. Rather keeping the 2 sinkholes, and then just counter everything they play. That is basically it. Then we have Amulet Titan. Well, if Scapeshift was a pillage matchup, then Amulet Titan is even more so. Play pillage, love pillage. You are not solely reliant on Blood Moon. It's usually even better to just pillage their lands, because they do have ways to kill Blood Moon, and also nowadays they do play usually Khan, so they have cheaper ways to, how to say, win the game basically. So if possible, you just wanna stop them from even getting to 4 mana, and that is quite easily done sometimes. Also, just Cryptic bouncing the Karoo lands, definitely strong play. Just don't give him a chance to like set up like Pact of Negation or Whale of Summer turn. Just kill the lands and stop him from even trying playing stuff. This is a matchup nowadays where you definitely, I think you wanna definitely at least bring in 1 projection, and if you have access to 2, sometimes even 2, it stops the 1 mana artifact, the Amulet of Vigor, on the play. Very strong. Nowadays, Relic is very common to basically play around the Relic of, you know, the one that taps mana. It plays around Blood Moon, or plays through it rather. Golos is quite popular, and Khan is very popular. And some lists, or some people rather, keep engineered explosives in, mostly for Blood Moon, and of course Ashiok. So again, you have a lot of targets actually for rejection, so I do like it. You should bring them in. This is matchup for Bolt, surprisingly, because killing the 1 mana scouts, and the Azuzas is important. You want to counter them, or at least Azusa if you can, but the Snake Scout is very important to kill fast, so keep in all the bolts. Sinkhole, actually not as good, I don't think so, even though they do play Khans and Golosses. You would, and sometimes Truckers. I guess Trucker doesn't count, but anyway. Still, I think it's better to play the Bolt and use these slots to play like Rejection and Pillage, of course, and Ashiok. Ashiok is amazing in this matchup. Their deck does a lot of searching, so definitely a great matchup for Ashiok. Oh, did the music stop? Not quite. Oh, we have some movie watching in the next room. Oh, okay. Alright, next up we have Burn. Well, this is quite a straightforward matchup. Play all the cheap spells basically, that is very easy. You're gonna cut some other remands, usually maybe 1 Cryptic, maybe 1 Sinkhole. I think Sinkhole has the upside of killing Eidolon without damage, but still it can be slow, and killing the 1-drops and Eidolon too, like instantly is very crucial for winning the matchup. So yeah, just play all the cheap counter spells, Dispels, plus Storms. Spell Snare is MVP. If you have the option, try to keep this snare open for their turn 2, for obvious reasons. Countering an Eidolon is a lot better than killing it with Bolt. Mana Leak is good, basically just a hard counter for the most part. Although Force is amazing. Cryptic is not horrible, because usually you don't have enough stuff to board out, and it is a hard counter at the end. The games that you end a significant part of them usually go to a later stage of the game. But just having a way to take the game over thus is good. Blood Moon is good, usually Dredge with multiple cards. The games that you win, again, are usually prolonged, so stopping the Canopy lands and stopping them from playing. This card basically stops them from playing any Helixes and Boros Charms. So it easily trades with between 1 to 3 cards, which is quite nice. If you have Slashes or Mango Sprays, definitely bring them in. Again, 1 mana remove spells are huge. You just wanna use these cards as soon as possible. Just use them, and then you wanna use them again with Snappy as soon as possible. Get the Snapcaster Mage in play and start raising. Very simple. Narset is not optimal in this matchup. This is one of the few matchups where I could actually see cutting Narset sometimes, but usually I think still Narset is good enough, because even in the later stages of the game, even though the opponents, they do play cheap burn spells, you can grab Forces, you can grab Spell Snares and these spells that actually just trade very efficiently 1 for 1 with their burn spells. So the tempo sacrifice of paying 3 mana on your own turn, you usually just recoup it, and Narset can help you turn the game around. And I especially love a Narset if you have some Dragon's Claws in your sideboard. I think having 1 Claw is fine in a red heavy metagame. This is not gonna win you the game on its own. You need to have some counter spells. But again, usually the games you win, unless you have a very fast thing in the ice, they do tend to become prolonged. And Claw is amazing there. It gives you more opportunities to use your counter spells, and basically the effect this card has on the game just is very cumulative. So you counter something and you gain life. They try to burn you away some more. You gain enough life to play like under a critical command. Now you're at like 6 life, and okay, well now they can't go try to burn you out just yet. So you maybe you buy an extra turn again, so you have again more mana and more cards. So it becomes increasingly difficult for the burn opponent to actually kill you. So very nice. Then we have I guess it's not quite a variant, but the Mono Red Prowess deck. This one is a bit more nuanced. Against the Mono Red Prowess deck, it's even more important to have these 1 mana answers to kill the 1-drop creatures. I think Dispel, for example, these cards become slightly worse because it's more about killing the creatures. But still, again, tempo does matter. This is a matchup where you actually keep in all your cryptics, because the Prowess version is more capable of grinding out. You actually need some card advantage, so I found out that sometimes when you just bring in all the answers, you bring the angers, sometimes you just like, you can stop the creatures, but then the game becomes incredibly grindy. And if you don't have a way to stop the first Reveler, the Bedlam Reveler, you are just as good as dead. You have lost the game. Because the deck is surprisingly good at grinding through itself and digging deeper with all the light up stages and Manamorphos and whatnot. So that is important. I think you want to keep in all the cryptics. Do take out Remands. This card is awful for obvious reasons. You don't want to give them extra Prowess triggers. Then the sideboarding aspect again is a bit tricky, because they have some very annoying threats that they can bring in. The Shrine of the Burning Rage and Saheeli. And they do bring them in, and these cards are very annoying because they require some specific answers. I think Saheeli is the reason you keep in all the sinkholes. Like if you have 2, you definitely play both Sinkholes, because you need to kill Saheeli on the spot. Sting in the Ice is of course an answer, and overall a great card against Prowess. But yeah, you gotta respect Saheeli. Shrine with Burning Rage is even more annoying. For this reason, I love a raid because it increases the density of removal spells you have for the 1-drops, while also just being super clutch against the Shrine, which is very, very annoying. Some lists of Prowess do play the 2-drops like Abbot of Carol Keep and the... what do we have? For example, the Kill Fiend, while they also of course play Monomorphos. So I think sometimes maybe it might be correct to play, if you have access to 2 spell snares, to keep both in. Because Shrine is very, very scary. Can kill you very fast. So I think maybe 1 snare is fine. I sometimes cut both. But I think maybe keeping 1 in, because of the fact that Shrine of the Burning Rage is quite popular nowadays, it might be correct. Then Narset is great in this matchup because it's more about like finding the bullets. Basically, you want to find the Sinkhole for the Saheeli, you want to find the Bolt for the 1 Prowess creature, you want to find Upgrade for the Shrine. Saheeli is great also because it stops Battleline Reveler from drawing cards, and for this reason also Relic is quite an important tool against Red Prowess. It stops the Battleline Reveler proactively, which is actually important because in this kind of matchup it's harder to keep your counters open, because you need to basically keep answering their threats. So, and like keeping mana open is more punishing. Being forced to keep mana open is more punishing, because you also need to start raising them if at all possible. So Relic being a proactive answer to nuke their graveyards and just basically stop Battleline Reveler is very, very strong. And also it does away with the lava darts in the graveyard, which are actually quite annoying. It's not for the damage mostly, but the fact that they have these 0 mana ways to activate Prowess Trigger at any time can be very troublesome if you wanna, like, for example, use Flame Slash on Bedlam Reveler. The card is very big, so again, it's just a very good upside, again, to Relic, to be able to either like force them to use lava darts or just exile them away. Anger, I'm actually not sure about. The new Prowess lists are quite 1 mana, drop heavy or dense, and they do play Saheeli usually, sometimes, quite often. So Anger does something, but it might not be good enough, because I think, again, you need to actually grind a bit. So Cryptic I like, Relic I like, and because you wanna combo these cards with 1 mana answers, 1 mana removal spells, all of them that you have, and all the cheap counter spells, then I think it usually means you don't have slots for Anger the Gods. And if you have Claw, this is an amazing matchup for Claw. And if you have Engineered Explosives, this is an amazing matchup for Engineered Explosives again. This card is quite efficient at killing the 1-drops, and it also kills Relic, which is quite big. Alright, we are definitely, I guess, halfway through here, a bit over. Next deck is Blue Red Storm. This deck is not super popular nowadays, and it's quite common for most people, but still maybe useful to go over. In the past I used to be quite down on Cryptic, even though grinding them out is something you need to do sometimes. You wanna like emphasize again cheap counter spells, so you can again keep the control of the game. It makes sense, right? But because nowadays Aria of Flame is quite a common sideboard card for the Storm players, having access to Cryptic Command is more important than before. The ability to bounce draw a Cryptic, Aria of Flame is very important. It's basically a perfect answer to Aria of Flame. So I think having at least 2 Cryptics is where you want to be, even though you can usually just counter the Aria, or just maybe, I don't know, make them just flood out. Still having access to Cryptic, I think, is important. And this is quite a good matchup because we have good things to bring in. Now, I think even though they have the 2-drops that make their spells cheaper, I don't think you wanna bring in additional counter spells, removal spells, because it is somewhat common for them to actually just board out some, if not all. I've seen some people board out all of the cost reducers. So the risk of just having unusable removal spells is quite big. I think Sinkhole and Fry especially are decent because some people, they do play Thing the Ice. It's quite rare, but it is something that has happened in the past. So having just a way to deal with Thing in the Ice from their side is very important. If you have access to Raining Volley, definitely bring it in. Could even shave a bolt 1 maybe, if you have enough excellent cards otherwise. Blood Moon is dead card in this matchup. Again, this is a good matchup to bring Relic in. The floor is high, it always cantrips. It makes them, for them, it's a lot harder to do the combo kill with a shrapnel, or whatever it's called. You know, the deal 1, deal 1, deal 1 Storm card. They are more reliant on Aria Flame or Empty the Warrens. And because of those cards, well, because of Empty, you wanna bring in EE. Again, great matchup for EE. Heals the cost reducers if you have to kill them, and is quite efficient at killing the 300 goblin tokens they get from Empty. I think it's reasonable to bring in 1 Anger as well, so you have 2 answers to the goblin tokens. But it's not. I think you can get away with just 1 of these, just maybe EE. Especially if you have again a Narset, because Narset really just digs deep, fast. You might be able to use Cryptic Command to tap draw the team, and also Thing in the Ice is an additional great way to deal with the empty tokens. So you're gonna have to balance it out. So you wanna have the bolts and use it like a Raining Volley to kill the cost reducers, but not too many, not too much, because they might not play any at all, or maybe just a couple. So you wanna keep some of the cheap counter spells, but you also wanna then have some Brave Hate in Relic. So small balancing act, but just playing draw go is usually just game winning. Again, I think this is a matchup for Ashiok. People tend to board out some gifts, but usually they keep 1 or 2 in, and I think this makes the card good enough. Because again, gift is a part of the, basically, what is the word? Like the standard combo kill, combo finish. That is it basically for Blue Red Storm. Next we have Mono Green Tron. Classic matchup. Again, one of the top reasons to play Pillage in the sideboard. Bring these in. You play Blood Moons, obviously. And I like cheap counter spells. Again, you don't always have Blood Moon or Pillage in your hand, in your opener. And you don't even dig into it, so you wanna ensure at least you have a way to like stop the maps, stop the Sylvan Scryings, to give yourself more time to find the Blood Moons and the Pillages. Hold is very bad, because we wanna just max out on everything else. We wanna play the counter spells, we wanna play the LD, and also we just rather have like sinkholes. Sinkholes stay in, mostly not for any planeswalkers like that, but just because you wanna have a way to kill Thought-Knot Seer, which is pretty much the scariest, how to say, creature threat from the board, a cheap threat they can play, even when they are under a Blood Moon or have been getting pillaged a lot. Obviously, an amazing matchup for Ashiok. Ashiok just rocks here, very strong. If you have surgicals, one is reasonable. Preventing them from ever getting drawn can be a clutch thing, definitely. So yeah, just got lightning bolts. Upgrade is fine. Sometimes you can get a map. Killing the Oblivion stones is quite good, although pillage usually does do the job as well, or just countering it. But having some redundancy is good, as usual. If you have stuff to bring in, I definitely would again shave on Thing the Ices if you play 4 or 3. Don't be afraid to go down to 2. Just bring in the efficient interactive spells to disrupt them aggressively. Thing the Ice is good, but it's not really the card that wins the game, even though it kills them. It's like having Pillage and maybe like Spell Pierce on the map that wins the game. Stuff like that. And yeah, and then again, Spell Pierce amazing, Force is amazing. Spell Snare is maybe the least good of the cards, but I still like it. Just again, having an additional way to just interact and disrupt the Tron player on the turn 1, turn 2 is where it matters the most. So if you can just counter a single Silver Scrying, it's amazing. You did it basically at that point. Then ETron, a bit tougher matchup. Against Mono Green Tron, you obviously also bring in the Resection. The card is even better against ETron. Here, this matchup is a bit trickier to sideboard. Pillage is less good because they are less reliant on getting to 7 and 8 mana, but still I think it's a keep. Especially on the play, just stopping the Tron or just killing Eldrazi Temple can be very necessary. Blood Moon, again, it's way less crippling. They only need 4 or 5 mana. They play Wastes. I don't think I've ever been able to lock out an ETron player, at least in sideboard games, with this card, but the fact that it turns off Cavern of Souls is the most important bit. Being able to actually remand and mana leak and cryptic the ETron player's plays is what matters the most. Very important. And also, like, for these reasons, I think mana leak and remand, you keep them both in. It's a bit risky. Sometimes you don't have Blood Moon or Pillage, and they don't always counter the Eldrazi because they have Cavern of Souls out, but you need to take a chance. If you can get to mana leak or remand their plays, I mean, it does happen sometimes, and that is definitely where you want to be, because then you can actually stay in control of the game, because dealing with the cards is way harder than countering them. If you have access to Magma Spray, do bring it in. The Matter Reshaper is very, very annoying. I think you wanna cut all the bolts instead. Cut all the bolts. Not Upright, because Upright kills Chalice, which is good, but cut all the bolts. Rather bring in sprays. Flame Touch is amazing. Actually 1-for-1 trade, and with an amazing tempo advantage on Thought-Knot Seer. Great. Way better than bolts. Rose, again good. Kills Thought-Knot Seer and also kills Reality Smasher, which is even harder. It is 1-for-2, which sucks. but you usually have ways to gain card advantage against the ETron player quite easily, whereas they don't. The only way they can gain card advantage is just playing Reality Smasher, basically. So just don't die, and you can eventually grind them out with Cryptics. Oh, and about Matter Reshaper. Anger is quite fine. I think you'd rather play Angers than Bolts against this deck, against ETron, because just, again, getting the 1-for-1 trade against Matter Reshaper is good. Bolt is efficient, but it just doesn't trade. It's not good enough, usually. Maybe one is good, but again, if you have access to slashes, sprays, those definitely come in over the bolts. And yeah, Abrade, good. Chalice is annoying. It's not something that you can basically stop always. I think you do play spell PSS. At least one. Because the ETron players, they do play cons, strategies, maps. So usually it does trade 1-for-1. But Spell Snare is a bit too narrow. I would rather play Force of Negation. Because it also consistently counters the Chalice, and also later down in the game it counters cons and all its dusts and such spells. These are not the best, but I think you need enough ways to deal with a Chalice. So Abrade is preferable. You would much rather use Abrade or Rejection to answer Chalice or any artifact they play. But then, I mean, this might be something you have to do actually, basically. Pillage also can deal with a Chalice. That is an important upside on the card, even though you usually do target the Pillage at their Eldrazi Temples and Urza lands, Tron lands, whatever they are called. If you have access to Crackling Drake. Oh, that's loud. Definitely do play Crackling Drake. Again, usually 2-for-1 actual trade against the Hot Seers and whatnot. Ral also amazing. Actually, solid 1-for-1 against Reality Smasher. Very rare feat. Very good. If you have access to Ancestral, definitely do play Ancestral. It can get countered by Chalice on 0, but still, it's a grindy matchup. It actually plays around Thought Seer. Very good. Right, that is basically ETron. We have only a few more left. We have Dredge. This deck has really been nerfed by a lot, but still worth talking about. I think Blood Moon is worth it against Dredge. Stops the Loam loops basically. Oh, that is loud. Loam sloops, sloops, and many stuff. Like basically, now that they don't have looting, they have so few ways to actually like keep digging deeper. Outside of just natural dredging, if they have a dredge card in the graveyard. But again, if they have to keep returning these imps and whatnot to their hand, if Blood Moon is out, they can't replay them, and they don't have lootings as a way to discard them. So Blood Moon has become even more efficient or effective against the dredge decks. And Remand is quite great. It stops Cathartic Reunion, really slows them down. Perfect answer to Conflagrate. Yeah. Also, just countering the treacherous themselves is good. I also like, again, Spellsnare for the same reason I liked Spellsnare against Mono Green Tron. This only hits basically Cathartic Reunion, but just stopping the best engine card in the deck, even at some amount of time, is good enough. We don't have too many actual silver bullets against Dredge, so just keeping these cards that slow them down is good enough. Spell Snaring or Spell Piercing too, also a good card against the Dredge deck. Spell Snaring or Spell Piercing Cathartic Reunion can be very crippling, can slow them down by a lot. And Force is of course amazing in the matchup. Again, matchup where you can easily just board out bolts. You can sometimes aggro them out with Thing, but it's not consistent enough. They usually do bring in like Upper TKs or Assassin Trophies, just ways to kill Thing. Sometimes it dives to Conflagrate, so it's not reliable enough. Rather just play these counter spells, play Cryptics, and just give yourself time to find the relics, to empty graveyard, use anger, sweep the board, and just keep, in case they have some deadly Conflagrates, just keep a remand in hand, so you can also always remand the Conflagrate in order to not die. And that's basically it. I mean, it's quite self-explanatory. Just deal away with the graveyard and slow them down. Upgrade, again, you said board out bolts. You might want to keep in 1 or 2, usually just 1, because you don't have enough stuff to bring in. Because I think boarding out Mana Leak is also good. So like I'm looking to board out some bolts, Mana Leaks, and that's it. I think theirs is great. But yeah, Upgrade can kill the Horn that nowadays all the lists play. The mill 2 card, so that is basically what pushes it over Lightning Bolt in the matchup. Of course, you sometimes... Oh, I am Sinkhole is also very bad. You sometimes randomly do need to kill, like, Price Amalgam in order to not die, basically, or just to flip Thing in the eyes aggressively, but for the most part, it's just not a good game plan to use Lightning Bolts against Dredge. Not a long-term solution. Alright, next matchup. What is the card? Wait, Scales. Hardened Scales, yeah. Again, not a very common deck anymore, but definitely one that commands respect. This is definitely a matchup for EE. Very strong card against them. The Scales deck is very good at creating these value loops. They have the Llanowar Reborn, for example, and Animation Module. This combo is deadly against us. It's just infinite value. It's very hard to interact with. But we do what we can. I like Blood Moon in this matchup again. Blood Moon stops the Inkmoth Nexus and the value lands. Sometimes it can randomly make the mana for them a bit worse, but yeah. I think just like stopping the Llanowar Reborn in itself is good enough. Okay, at least you want one, and I think nowadays I do keep both Blood Moons in the matchup. Yeah, the deck can be difficult to interact with. Thing in the Ice is the main game plan. They do bring in Dismembers, so it's not super reliable. So it can be tough. Definitely. We have some cards that look like good answers, but they actually aren't. Eye of the Gods can be good, but it's not super reliable. Flame Slash and Lightning Bolt and such, they are okay. You need some removal spells. Even though it can be hard to create these situations where you actually just trade 1 for 1 with these cards, it can be done. Sometimes you do get to kill Arcbound Worker when it's alone in the battlefield. Same for like Arcbound Ravager and such. And obviously Rejection, amazing. Obviously. Again, matchup for Mana Leak Remand. I think Remand is on the edge. But the fact that these decks do play Khan from the board makes the Remand a bit more appealing. But yeah, it is actually an interesting matchup. I am not super sure on these on the board plan. It's somewhat grindy, but even though force can counter anything or like the non-creatures at any time, it's not something maybe that is the best solution. But in any case, definitely having access to one Touch Storm or one EE or both is very valuable. Just using Cryptic Command to like tap draw and just slowing them down until you can find your EE or Touch Storm is, in my opinion, the best line. Or gives you the best chance to win the game. Like, it's very hard to actually just grind them out. It can happen, but again, these value loops and like just some random hangback walkers sneaking in, they happen so easily that it's a lot easier if you have a way to just, hard reset the board, basically. Pillage, this card is appealing, but I don't think this is a matchup for it. Somewhat unintuitively, it's just a bit too slow. Again, well, that's basically it. It's just a bit too slow. The deck, they do play these Belching Jars, so, well, it's a bit on the edge, but I think the issue is just that it's a bit too slow. They are not reliant on any single artifact usually. They have ways to just shift around the +1/+1 counters. Any creature they have in play can become a monster, so you need just these. I don't know. You need to be flexible, and Pillage is somewhat inflexible in this matchup. And yeah, of course, if you have Melody, well, Dar is good. For the same reason, Engineered Explosives is good. Most of their cards, or the scariest cards from them, Hangabak Walker and Walking Ballista, are both 0 mana. So, Melody on 2 mana, and then Snapcaster Mage plus Melody on 4 mana is very, very nice play you can do. And could be just game winning on its own. So yeah, that is basically it for Scales. Last matchup is Humans. This deck is sadly quite rare nowadays. It's an excellent matchup for us. Grinding is somewhat important, so you definitely do want to bring in all the removal spells, basically. Variance is like salt here. Bring it all in. Slash, great. Try, even better. And Raining Volley is just perfect. This card is like cheat code against humans. They can never name it on Meddling Mage. They can never play around it, and yeah, just 1 mana kills everything. Super good. But because they do play sometimes stuff like the Ranger Captain of Eos, for example, you do need some ways to grind out. So Nauset is great because they don't have too many ways to actually put a haste throw into play. Like, once you go to sideboard games, especially, it's so easy to keep the board in check with all these 1 mana answers, 1 mana removal spells, and Nauset pairs up with that perfectly. And same goes for Ral, just a very good grindy engine, because you do need some value. And Cryptic isn't really a value card, even though Cryptic is good in the matchup because it just keeps them in check, and is especially good with Thing in the Eyes. You actually can usually never counter draw the spells, so not so great. Then counter spells, obviously it's a Vial and Covenant of Souls deck, so you wanna board out most. Mana Leak and Remand have to go, definitely. Spell PS and Force, These cards can be playable, I think, against the deck because they can counter a Vial. On the play, Spellpierce might get an edge, although maybe it's gotta pull up, you know. On the draw, I think Force is probably good. I think you might want to keep both in, because tempo matters more, and stopping just turn 1 Vial with Force, on paper it seems quite good. Oh, and obviously Blood Moon is amazing in this matchup. Blood Moon is just great. And Click, this card is not typically too awesome in aggro matchups, but is serviceable, basically good enough. It trades with a Mantis Rider, which is one of the scariest cards in their deck. So I think it makes the cut. Again, it depends on how strong your sideboard is here. I think that's it. It's just not very difficult matchup to, you know, sideboard for. I think this list now, we had a blue-white control, Grixis Death Shadow, 4-color Whirza, Jaunt, Amulet Titan, Valakut or Titanshift, Burn, Mono Red Prowess, Blue Red Gift Storm, we had Mono Green Tron, we had ETron, Dredge, Hardened Scales, and Humans. Covers most of the popular decks and competitive decks in the post-ban 2019 metagame. Now I forgot to do this part, the last part here, at the beginning of the video, so I'll do it now. And I think it also makes some sense to do it now, just from what we saw here, from this theory crafting and reasoning. What are some of the basically most important sideboard cards? Some of these are quite fringe, like Drake. Nowadays, Wally I think is quite fringe. Pyromancer is quite fringe, but I think some of these cards are just an all-stars that are so useful and unique. I think in most metagames you should have them in your sideboard. So let's start. How do I go about this? Just gonna click out all the non-important ones basically. And some of these are just clusters of cards basically. Oh, I meant to... Anger was supposed to be here actually. Let's put it in. We can not have this even. Ashok is amazing, but I think it's not quite classic. This is basically just 5 cards. So first we have cheap counter magic. Additional cheap counter magic is such a almost a must in your sideboard. We are just looking for flexible and powerful cards, and these counter spells, like such as, I mean, this is basically Spell Pierce or Dispel or Flusterstorm. These, all of these double as anti-burn hate and Red Prowess, and they are amazing against control decks, and they are also amazing against spell-based combo. Just ticks all the boxes. You want to be able to, in all of these matchup categories, you want to be able to board some dead cards out, and these are just such an easy way to like fill the gaps in. I think you should always have like 1 or 2 spell pierces or dispels or whatnot in your board, unless they are all in the main deck. If you have like 2 spell snare, 2 spell pierce in the main deck, then maybe it makes sense to not have extras in the sideboard. But usually I think it just makes sense. It's such a classic to have one of these or a combination of these in the sideboard. Next one is cheap removal spells. Which is your pick? Can differ from time to time. Right now I would argue Flame Slash is quite a classic. It's not as good as before the bans, but still It's again quite flexible. Very, very strong against the red aggro decks, mono red, red burn, red white burn, and mono red Prowess. Doubles as anti-Damogorgon card, very good. Kills, but not seers, very good. Just really, it's an efficient card. It fills the holes. That's it basically. Just it looks like a small upgrade, but it's actually a big upgrade in many matchups. Having extra 1 mana removal spells is quite valuable. It can be a different card depending on the metagame. Sometimes maybe it's Manga Spray, or maybe Fry, or maybe Roast. Who knows? But still, I think having 1 or 2 of these effects should be in the sideboard. Anger of the Gods. Just basically a staple. What is the card? The name, like a sweeper. There is rarely a metagame where sweepers are actually like very strong, but it's just again the bit of utility you always want to have. There is always some kind of deck that really is hurts to play against Anger of the Gods. Like Dredge is obvious. You have some kind of go white decks usually, like you have tokens and humans and elementals. Against Scales, the Exile clause is very important. Against ETron, against Matter Reshaper, the Exile clause is important. Maybe against Red Prowess is also quite strong. So there's always something. Sometimes you play against like Jeskai deck that has Gaze of Saintcraft. You bring this in. So it's just like, it's such an unique effect. And it's also backbreaking in some matchups that I really can't see not having at least 1 or 2 angers in any Blue Moon sideboard at any time. Next we have Pillage. This, like, just Stone Rain is such a staple. I think there's always big mana decks in Modern, it's always Tron. There's usually Titanshift or Amulet. This card is amazing because it's such an unique effect. Like, you can't replace Pillage, you cannot replace Stone Rain with anything, not even Blood Moon, because actually killing the lands is different. You're not opening yourself to vulnerabilities like the Force of Vigor and such. Also doubles as Artifact Hate, very good. And again, just another card you can bring in against blue-white, especially now that some versions have Stoneforge Mystic. So you can board out some extra balls and extra thing in the ices. Yes, Pillage is it's kind of a meme in the Blue Moon Discord, but Pillage is crucial. And finally, Relic. Yes, always going to be Graveyard synergies in Modern. There's always, this card becomes comes in so many matchups, it's hilarious. Against Death Shadow, against any Tarmogoyf deck, against Lingering Souls, against Dredge. Yeah, against Red Prowess. Like, still, especially in a metagame where like they are not super dedicated graveyard decks. It's just the perfect soft hate because it has high ceiling, high floor. You always get to cantrip. It's a bit slow, but you always get to cantrip. And for that reason, it's just like the perfect free graveyard hate card against the fair decks, on top of being good against the actual graveyard decks. And that's basically it. Obviously, the Blue Moon lists and sideboards are not super defined. Some people will disagree with something that I have said. If you have something to add or think I'm wrong, definitely leave comments. If you have watched this whole video, I really what can I say? I super appreciate it. And even if you just check some matchups that are to your interest, super appreciate it. Definitely, I would love it if you have something to say some questions, or if you want to start a fight with me, you should do it. We can have a discussion. Would be fun. That is basically it. It took surprisingly long. I try to be quite fast, but there's just a lot of matchups in Modern, and a lot to talk about. And hopefully I might be adding some asterisks later down the line, but I think this was quite, hopefully quite accurate and all encompassing. So yeah, just hope this was of use to you, and maybe also somewhat fun to watch. So next time, probably gonna be more gameplay once I find the time to stream. My current list is here. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.